So earlier this week, we of course had the Nintendo investors briefing where they go over financial information for the last quarter and of course potentially give us new nuggets of information about what's coming up in the future. And from that, we of course got some very interesting announcements. Right after it wrapped up, President Furukawa talked about backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch successor, which we're going to call the Nintendo Switch 2 in this video. There's someone that always complains and says it's not going to be called the Switch 2. You're probably right. But what is it going to be called? It's just easier to say that. But with that, we of course got some more information. President Furukawa actually did an interview with a Japanese news outlet, shining some more light on the Switch 2. We got updated information from the investors meeting that's been translated into English. So I want to go over all of this stuff with you guys. But first, we have to talk a little bit about the backwards compatibility thing. Because of this, there has been a situation that I have seen sort of stemming online that I feel like I need to talk about because it's very disrespectful. And this is kind of like a rant. I was going to do this at the end of the video, but I want it to be at the start so that people kind of have to watch this. But the amount of disrespect that I have seen towards MVG, who is Modern Vintage Gamer, who of course is a game developer. He has shipped games on Nintendo platforms, on the Nintendo Switch, on the PlayStation, on the Xbox. He makes video games. He has a proprietary engine that is bringing retro games to modern platforms. Now, MVG, about a year and change ago or so, made a video from a developer standpoint talking about how the Nintendo Switch 2 could potentially have issues when it comes to backwards compatibility with Switch 1 games. Now, this wasn't from just talking out of an ass perspective. This was talking from a technical perspective as someone who works on the hardware, who has developed games for the system on the chip, and some of the hurdles that Nintendo would have to deal with when doing backwards compatibility if they decided to do it with the Switch successor. Now, since the Switch successor has been announced to have backwards compatibility, people have been taking that as a way to go back and talk bad about him and talk bad about his video about how he was wrong and how they were right. First and foremost, who are you? You are just some random account who has never done anything for the video game industry, who has never been a part of the video game industry, who simply just talks on places like Twitter and YouTube behind your anonymity of nobody knowing who you are or what you do in the real world, because whatever it is you do in the real world does not pertain to the video game industry. For you to sit there and say that he was wrong and you were right, you simply made a guess. You had a 50-50 chance of whether or not the system was going to have backwards compatibility. You had no knowledge of the system on a chip that the Nintendo Switch have. You have no knowledge about how it would be difficult and what sort of obstacles Nintendo would have to overcome in order to add backwards compatibility to the system. You are simply just a consumer. So for people to sit there and disrespect him over that and try to dunk on him like, oh, what do you know? You're a jackass. You should be deleted off of Twitter and you shouldn't have a YouTube account either because you're an idiot. You want to say whatever you want about me and questioning the backwards compatibility? Fine. I do not care. I don't claim to be a developer. It was just my opinion that there would potentially be some hesitations for Nintendo to do it. But to say that to a developer is just disrespectful and ridiculous. Now, here's some of the new information about the Switch successor. So one of the things that Nintendo is going to be doing with the Switch successor is strengthening relationships with software publishers. Now, this is a slide directly from Nintendo themselves, no pun intended, and they go over some of the companies that they have been working with and plan to work with more in the future. And you know, when you first look at this list, you have your usual suspects here. You have your Atlas. I mean, they put out everything, Nippon, Koei Tecmo, Bandai Namco, and stuff like that. You know, pretty common stuff. But I think some of the more interesting ones are some of the more Western developers, because really when you look at Western developed games, a lot of them don't seem to come to Nintendo platforms, either because of hardware limitations or, you know, worrying whether or not the game is going to sell extremely well. Because when you look at a Nintendo platform, usually the first party games are the ones that hit the million plus club, and you don't really see many third party games on their own hit the million plus club on there. So there is that sort of risk and reward situation. But when you see companies like Microsoft, Take-Two, EA, like, I get it. You might not like some of these games. You might not like some of these games that these developers make, but I would rather have the option to play the game on a specific platform than to not have the option. Like, I don't understand why people want less options of games to play. If anything, I want more options. If you're wondering who is underneath me, you can see that it is Ubisoft and Warner Brothers games. Warner Brothers, of course, another Western developer. Been kind of going through it a little bit. Ubisoft is interesting because of the fact that, I mean, they're probably not going to be around for much longer in the capacity that they are. But, you know, I like seeing things like this because that's kind of ever since the Nintendo 64, really, you know, there has been kind of a bit of a weird gap between some third-party developers and putting their games on Nintendo platforms. But I think things are going to be different this time around. When you look at the launch of the Switch, it had really no third-party support in that, you know, in that initial launch window, besides like Super Bomberman R and Ultra Street Fighter 2, the final challengers. But if you look at something like the Wii U, there was tons of third-party support coming off of the success of the Wii. But after the Wii U failed, people got a little bit more hesitant when it came to Nintendo, so they didn't really put many games on the Switch until it was, you know, realized that, oh, wow, this is a successful system. People are buying this in droves. We need to get on board with this. So I think the later ports and things like you saw with this generation for Nintendo, I don't think it's going to be as big as a problem going into the next generation, simply because of the fact that most developers are going to be prepared and they've seen the success that companies are having on the platform. And really, I mean, they want a piece of that pie too. If a calculator sells well, they're going to put games on it. Like, that's just how it boils down at the end of the day. And the final thing I want to go over with this Nintendo Switch successor situation is a quote that President Furukawa had given to a Japanese news site called Mainichi. And I think that some people are kind of misconstruing this quote a little bit because I've already seen videos pop up about it and I just got to shake my head a little bit. So the quote is as follows. President Furukawa said about the details of the Nintendo Switch successor: there is no change in the plan to announce it during the fiscal year ending March 2025. I can't say anything more than that. Regarding potential hesitation to purchase the current model due to the announcement of a successor, he added, I can't say it doesn't exist at all, but the Switch is already in its eighth year since launch. I don't think the presence or absence of a successor will have much impact on customers who are purchasing it at this time. So because of this quote, I've already seen the videos pop up where people are like, oh, they can announce it any day now. It could be announced this year. 2024 is back on the table. And it's like, where did you go to school? Like, what is your reading comprehension? He clearly says, I don't think the presence or absence of a successor will have much impact on customers who are purchasing it at this time. Presence or absence, meaning absence. Like, there's still people that think it's going to be announced in 2024. As far as a reveal is concerned, you got that. That's what the whole backwards compatibility announcement was. That's what that whole backwards compatibility announcement did, to basically say, hey, that software you're purchasing, it's going to work on your new system. Now, whether or not it'll be enhanced or not, I mean, Mario and Luigi Brothership definitely could use. Dude, I've been watching people play that game, and that overworld with like the ocean, it's so choppy. It's like, bro, that's not an artistic art style. That's just, man, that's just bad frame rate. Like, it's just jarring to look at it. But with having that sort of safety net, knowing that your software is going to work on the next system, people will still buy the software. I don't think Nintendo is anticipating a whole lot of Switch sales this holiday season. That's why they revised their forecast to actually be lower than what they initially had anticipated. And I think they understand that there is going to be a bit of a dip this holiday season, and they're not going to see the strongest sales in the world because everyone is waiting for this system. You've reached 146 million people. At some point in time, you're going to get to the point of where everyone who wants the product already has the product. Like you said, it's been out on the market for nearly 8 years now. And of course, there's been revisions to it. There's cheaper alternatives. You know, you could have done a price drop this holiday season. I think you would have hit your metrics and then some if you would have done a price drop this holiday season. But I don't think they're really worried about it. And they shouldn't be worried about it. You know, this is what happens. Things like this tend to happen. I know people bring up the 3DS situation for how the 3DS actually saw a growth spurt after the Switch was released. That was because of a drop in price. Okay, they were practically giving those away. There was $99 bundles for the 3DS that came packaged with games and were limited edition systems. $99 is an impulse buy for a lot of people. $300 is not an impulse buy for a lot of people. So that's kind of how I envision this. But you know what's going to happen. You're going to see every week because Brazil Potato over on Reset Era is going to make a tweet saying, I heard that it's this week. And every week until the end of the year, you're going to see the usual suspects making those videos. Is the reveal this week? I heard it's happening this week. Brazil Potato on Reset Era said it was going to happen. And then we just get into this cycle, the never-ending cycle. 2025, people, it makes the most sense at this point in time. They're not going to do it at the Game Awards. They're not going to do it on Thanksgiving Day. They're not going to come out Christmas Day. Ho, 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 I'm Mario. Here's the Switch 2. Just be a little bit patient, people. Be a little bit patient. But those are my thoughts on all this new information that has been out there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Hope you enjoyed my little rant. If I offended you, good. Because you probably were one of the jackasses that were disrespecting him for simply bringing it. That's the problem with some of these diehard Nintendo fans. Like, they take these victory laps, and it's like, bro, you guessed. You guessed. You just think it was a guess. You did it. Good job. You know? This isn't like Metroid Dread where you can look at previous sales data to see that it wasn't going to sell 3 million units in the first year. Oh! And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.